Aloha, everyone. Welcome back to Heartbeat Narratives. My name is Molly, and I'll be your host. And I'm very, very grateful to have Kevin with me on the podcast today. Mahalo for coming over, Kevin.
Thank you for having me, Molly.
We were very graciously connected through a mutual friend through work, and I'm realizing all the connections that he saw between our interests and being able to share what makes our own hearts beat. I'm eager to hear about your life, what brings you joy, and so forth. So, mahalo for coming over on this beautiful Saturday morning.
Thank you, Molly.
So, to start everything off, where are you from?
I'm from Kauaʻi. I was born and raised on Kauaʻi. And basically, I lived in a cottage on the edge of a rainforest. My childhood was really spent in the rainforest with the birds and fishing on the Hanamaulu River, fishing in Hanamaulu Bay. It was a very outdoor life, very close to nature, and I think that was my first connection that I've never lost, which is being close to nature. And I was never one to question whether there's a God or not, because when you're in nature and nature is so big, it's God or nature is just taken for granted.
I feel like that's a similarity I see between you and a lot of my other friends from Kauaʻi. Kauaʻi has this different transcendence, I think, between nature and people, in the sense that it's, I don't even know what I'm trying to get at, but it's this experience of being one with the natural world.
I think it's really big in Kauaʻi because nature is so big and dominant. The ocean is big and dominant. The rainforest is big and dominant. And even the cane fields. You can get lost even in cane fields. So you've got nature all around.
I lived in Kalihiwai for one summer and spent a lot of time working with a keiki summer program on the north shore of Kauaʻi. And I think it was the best summer of my life because I'd never eaten so many fresh foods that were grown and harvested locally.
Yes.
And then we, alongside the kindergarten through 8th graders, we were gardening, hiking, learning place names, learning oli or chanting, surfing, sailing, working in the lo'i. And I feel like I'm getting an image of what your childhood must have been like.
Yeah, my children would always ask me to tell them Kauaʻi stories. So one of the things that they laughed about is I would tell them that, well, we had fish for breakfast, fish for lunch, and fish for dinner. And they would laugh, and I'd say, well, you have to realize it's not the same fish all the time. We'd have breakfast fish, we'd have lunch fish, and we'd have dinner fish, and they're all different. But they still thought it was pretty funny that we didn't eat beef or anything else. It was mostly fish, and that was the preferred meat because cows on Kauaʻi are grass-fed, so they're walking around and tough. And pigs, you got to put in the imu because they're walking around and tough. So fish are the only thing that's soft and edible.
So you grew up fishing.
Yes.
And I'm guessing you were a water person.
Hunter-gatherer, water person, yes. Fishing, I don't know, at least a couple times a week. We basically do harvesting fishing, so sometimes we'd catch several 100 pounds of fish and we'd dry it. Then we'd have dried fish, but yeah, we'd fish all the time.
It sounds like a beautiful way to grow up.
It really was. It was very outdoor living because we'd go into the mountains to get fern shoots and bamboo shoots. And the jungle was really kind of like an icebox because you get so many fruits and vegetables from it. on a hike, you'd fill your backpack and you'd come down the mountain and you'd have lots of good stuff for a long time.
Better than Costco.
Better, yes. Yeah.
I wish everyone could experience what that lifestyle is like, because I imagine it would be hard to buy into all the big box stores once you experience a refrigerator of nature.
Yeah, so I'm 73, but in the 50s, we actually had ice boxes. So you get a block of ice once a week maybe, and I believe the ice box only had like 2 cubic feet of space in there, and there was like a 10-second rule. So the door could only be opened for like 10 seconds for you to get what you needed and close the door right away.
I love that. And so at some point you must have moved to the big city of Honolulu.
Yeah, I moved to Honolulu when I was 11. I was in Honolulu for about 6 years. And so I went to Kuhio School, Iolani, and Punahou. And then I went to Columbia University in New York City. And then I went to UC Davis in California for law school. And after that, I came home and had a 50-year career as a tax attorney.
Wow, you've been on all the coasts.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And now where are you living?
So now I live in Pennsylvania, and it's a lot like going back to Kauaʻi, because I live again in a cottage in the woods, and instead of having pigs and birds, I've got deer and raccoons and rabbits in my front and backyards.
A different ecosystem, but still the same.
It's the same harmony with nature, and nature is big and man is small.
Yeah. So now that we are diving into what brings us joy and what makes us light up, what makes us tick, for you, Kevin, what makes your heart beat?
I would have to say that from an early age, it was being connected with nature. That was my home. It still is my home today. That's my go-to when everything else is not right. I tend to retreat into nature. Being able to say nature is my home is kind of saying a lot. Home is actually another way of saying love. So there are these Beatty Bear books. I don't know, a lot of people read them. And when I was reading them to my children, I thought, yeah, I would like to have a home like Beatty. And so, yeah, I've been kind of searching my whole life for a home. And I have a feeling what I was trying to do was get back to that living with nature that I had on Kauaʻi, that I grew up with. And I finally found it in Pennsylvania, in the woods, in an Amish community where, well, they don't use electricity. They don't have televisions or cell phones or cars. So it's really close to Kauaʻi in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I recall from our first conversation when we initially got connected, we were talking about different ideas of what love could look like and what our spirit draws us to. And I was curious, what would you like to talk about in that realm?
So I would say one of the things that occurred to me when I was quite young was that we didn't talk about feelings. We talked about the mind and educating the mind. And I thought, wow, that's really odd because there's so many feelings. Why are people not being educated about feelings? I guess I educated myself about feelings. And a couple of things that occurred to me is that your heart or your body wisdom is this subconscious way of being which is vastly superior to whatever the mind can conjure up. That your body wisdom is actually, well, it's actually the seat of your soul, and the feelings that are subconscious, you may not even have words for the feelings that you're feeling. That is the deep sea under the conscious level that is really unexplored. Unless you get into, like, let's say, Eastern religions, maybe yoga or Ayurvedic things or Zen, it's hard to access that. And even if you access it, they don't give you words. It's kind of remained like a mystery for people who are willing to go and do the meditation. And I think, gosh, that is such a strange thing, because it overlooks the fact that, I don't know, I guess if I had to quantify it, I think people are like 70-80% body wisdom, and the mind is just a check, a rational check to see if what my emotions are showing me is correct. Does it, meet all the checklist points? That body wisdom is big. One of the things that really is of interest to me is love at first sight. And to me, that's an expression of body wisdom that in America we tend to disregard. We say, oh, what are they going to say? They're going to say, oh, you know what, that's an infatuation. And if you met somebody on the internet, they'll say, okay, that guy's catfishing you. I mean, it's totally disparaging the feeling. And I guess I would say this, that if you do have the feeling, I think it's really important, because it's really a golden opportunity for you to get into yourself and ask yourself, why am I having this feeling, and what names can I give to it, and where does it come from? And I would say that in my life, what I found is that a lot of these feelings come from, if you don't have a home, like a lot of people in America, they don't really have a home that's good and stable. So I think there's a very strong unexpressed desire by many Americans for a home. And the home, really, that desire comes from not only the natural feeling, but is accentuated by the fact that a lot of people don't get validation from their homes. They don't get seen. And especially in Hawaii, a lot of these kids nowadays, like when they're 4 or 5, if you're middle class or upper middle class, they're telling you, hey, you know what, you got to get into Puno and you got to be a professional, otherwise you'll never survive. So, see, that's the kind of stuff that irritates me, because it overlooks the heart and what these children are feeling. I think when you have love at first sight, when you look at it, if you examine your feelings, you'll say, what? This woman has expressed to me, even though I just saw her across the room, or I just heard her voice, and I can't figure out why I would be attracted to her, but my need for a home, for love, for validation, for security, are somehow being met by this woman, or this image that I have of this woman. And I think it's really important for people to track down those feelings within themselves so that they understand and honor who they are before they proceed to get into a relationship. Because unless you know where your feelings come from, if you don't honor your true feelings, I think you could flame out. And I think a lot of people have the flame out and then they blame it on an infatuation when actually it's two people not being ready and not honoring what that attraction was and what does that attraction say about my needs. Yeah.
I almost see the love at first sight as a pathway into understanding our emotions more deeply, more broadly. Because I feel like love at first sight is this like almost instantaneous, overwhelming feeling that then we can explore further internally. But I'm also thinking about love for others in a non-romantic sense, you know, where you have those moments with strangers where, say you witness a car accident and you park your car, run over and help, and there's that love between people when you're helping someone and maybe they really needed you in that moment. Do you think that love at first sight could be a gateway into understanding our emotions more widely in all situations?
Yes. And I didn't understand this, but, you know, I'm 73 now, so now I understand it better just by looking at my life. There are many other things which people will see in other people that will just draw them closer. And like you say, it doesn't have to be a car accident. It could be, you know, how many times I've been pumping gas and on the island over, I'll see somebody and I'll think, wow, that's an interesting person. Could be a guy or a girl. And we'll pump gas for a few more seconds. And then one of us will wave to each other and smile. And we'll make like a great connection.
There's those little moments of recognition of the other person on another level. It's more than just hi. It's like, I see you.
Yes.
Like, say on New Year's Eve this year, for the first time ever, I saw all of our neighbors out on our street watching the fireworks. And I was like, wow, this only happens once a year where we see all the families, the kids, the grandkids, the grandparents, and it's midnight and we're witnessing this beautiful thing. But why can't this be every day where we have these kinds of conversations and shared collective joy together?
Yep, I tell you, it's really something.
Have you experienced love at first sight in your life?
I have to admit that I've been studying it more closely because 3.5 years ago, I met someone online at an ACA meeting, Adult Children of Alcoholics. I was tuning in from Hawaii and she was tuning in from Pennsylvania. I've been going to meetings for a long time, like over 20 years. And so this is the first time I actually saw someone that I thought, gosh, this is really interesting. I think she's a mother and has 2 young children. And I didn't think of it at the time, but I realized in retrospect that what I was attracted to was the fact that this woman was a great mother and had a great mothering instinct. So I gravitated to that. And I didn't know this, but she felt the same way that, you know, she saw me across this Zoom room with 25 people in it. And I thought, damn, this is really outrageous because usually this happens in person, but for it to work on Zoom across 6 time zones is pretty amazing. To make a long story short, in a few months, we started to send emails. We were emailing each other. And I guess after 4 emails and seeing her for like 3 months, once a week on Zoom, we both admitted we were in love with each other. Mm-hmm. So I moved to Pennsylvania to be with her.
Wow. 3 years. Yeah. About 3 years ago.
2.5 years ago,
okay.
Yeah.
What a connection.
I'm the guy that's, for years, I would tell people, don't fall in love on the internet. And I thought, this is God's joke to have Kevin be humble, because we're going to have him fall in love on the internet after he's been telling people for like 20 years, don't fall in love on the internet. Yeah.
I mean, it's proof that it works. And I read recently somewhere that it was showing percentages of how people have met their significant others over time. And it showed decades, like the early 1900s through the modern day. And it was showing meeting through friends, meeting through school. And it was like 90 to 100%, because, you know, those were your communities.
Yes.
And then the meeting through mutual friends has slowly declined over the last 70 years. And now it's more like 80% or something meet online.
Oh, you're kidding me.
It was just
gosh.
like a huge shift. And I think that that's fascinating, but also I know so many people, at least within my generation, who would love to have that meet cute moment with a future significant other where they bump into each other at the grocery store while they're shopping for oranges. And those instances have just gotten less and less frequent. But are there other love stories or love at first sight examples that you've seen in movies or in other people's experiences that have drawn you in throughout your research?
So a lot of times you'll have your relatives that say, oh yeah, you know, I saw my wife and I knew at that moment in high school or in college or at this friend's party that, you know, she was going to be my wife. There are many of these stories, but the only ones you hear about are the ones where, yeah, it was love at first sight and, you know, I should have known it ended badly. But I've been a collector of these love at first sight stories that have lasted decades and, you know, just are like amazing. And some of them are just in plain sight, like, just a country western singer, Dolly Parton.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And she met her husband when she was at the laundromat, and he came in his pickup truck, and he leaned out the window, and she was outside, and he asked if she would like to go out with him, and she said no. And he thought to himself, I'm going to marry that girl.
Oh, funny.
Yeah. And yeah, so he was a businessman. He never went to her shows, but he passed away like last month. So basically, they had like a 60-year marriage.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I read, I think it was in a magazine, about how the actor Matt Damon met his wife. He ran into a restaurant and he asked the girl behind the counter, like, can I hide back here? You know, hide from the photographers. And they've been together for a very long time at this point. Just what a funny happenstance, but very honest way of meeting somebody, because it wasn't contrived. He didn't know he was going to meet her, and she didn't know that she was going to meet a movie star.
Yeah.
So it's more like that people to people, heart to heart interaction. It's funny we're talking about love at first sight, because I interviewed my brother and his wife, and my brother Jesse saw his wife Gigi when they were like 12, 13 years old, and she was walking down their middle school hallway. He's just a preteen boy, and he sees her walking towards him, and like the light is shining all around her, and he had this feeling that she's going to be someone important in my life. But he'd never met her, they'd never spoken, and a year later they were introduced through a mutual friend in like 7th or 8th grade. And so I was like, wow, just that smack you in your face moment that even a young boy could experience is kind of incredible.
Yep. So see that. So this is Jesse and Gigi.
Yes, yes.
So how do you spell his name?
Jesse.
Okay. So I really love that story. And I tell you, I've collected many of those stories. And what I like about them is that the body wisdom and the intuition is so strong that he remembers that moment. And he knew that that was something special. And, he didn't act on it because, he's just in the hallway and life goes on. And then a year later, they get introduced. So it's a very interesting thing because, I've just seen it, I've experienced it, and I know it to be true.
Now I want to start collecting stories.
Yeah, well, I think that's really what you're doing, and I really applaud you for this because when you collect stories about the heart, what connects people, it's so much better than disconnected knowledge. It's just so great that you're trying to get people to at least see that a lot of these connections are real. In my experience, a lot of these connections that we've overlooked, I think people, if they pay attention to them, it'll go much better for them. And this even goes for work too, because, I'm a tax attorney, right? And people think, gosh, how can a feeling person be a tax attorney? It's really because you need a compass to navigate the tax code, because one of the things they say about it, if you took the tax code and you put all the pages end to end, it would go to the moon and come halfway back. So there's no way you can read all of that. Mm-hmm. So you have to have a system of navigation. And the navigation through all of that is really the heart. It's why is the code constructed the way it is? What is the purpose for these sections? And are the sections doing what they're supposed to do? Because, tax, like everything, any other law, is just a form of social engineering. So it really goes back to people's feelings, deep-seated feelings. And it may look attenuated because of the technicality of tax and the fact that it has numbers in it, but the root of it, the foundation of it, is people's feelings, people's connection, and how do you build a community and do it through taxation in a way that is connecting all of us and keeps us together.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think it's fascinating how the law can be built around that moral compass that stems from those gut feelings, if I'm phrasing that in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, so I would say that when I was in law school, one of the things that really encouraged me was I read William O'Douglas's autobiography. And in it, he talked about being the youngest person on the Supreme Court and Chief Justice Hughes coming over to him and telling him that, after 75 years in politics and being on the bench, he had come to the conclusion that it was all about your heart and your gut, and had very little to do with the mind, that the court decisions were just rationalizations of the feelings that you get from your gut and your heart. William O'Douglas always remembered that, and I thought, I believe that to be genuine and true, and a lot of attorneys think it's all about the mind, and no, that's just the froth, that's just the white water on the ocean, but the deep blue sea where all these emotions arise from, they don't pay enough attention to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For listeners who may have never experienced this love at first sight feeling, do you have any insights on how people can tap into their emotions more deeply or to get into their senses more readily? Books or practices that you've come across in your studies?
One of the biggest things for me is to get away in nature. And if you're in nature, nature will teach you because you're quiet and you're listening to nature. I've been on, hundreds of retreats, all different kinds. So one of them, I was in New Mexico, and there's a retreat at the top of Rose Mountain. I was there by accident. My life is just full of accidents that are meant to be. I'm there by accident because I'm dropping someone off, and they asked me to stay. One of the things that really interested me was that I'm at this retreat. I get to be in all kinds of, let's say, meditations. And one of them was what they call a vision quest, where you spend 24 hours in one spot and you don't move from it for 24 hours. So I did that, went off with a sleeping bag, and I parked myself under a tree on a slight ridge. In that 24 hours, there were a bunch of interesting things that happened. One of which was a doe came and bedded down about 25 feet away from me. And the doe saw me and came up and bedded down. And I thought, how interesting that she would bed down next to me because she's okay with my being there. That was one thing that really touched me and let me know that I was really in harmony with nature, such that she didn't see me as man who was a threat to her. Yeah, the other thing that was really interesting about that is I had a sponsee in Cambodia, and his name was Paul Salak. And at this retreat, which is very small, there's only like 12 people and 4 people that are at the camp helping us. And as one of them was serving me food, he had a name tag that said Salak on it. And I said, Salak is a really unusual name. I had a sponsee in Cambodia. His name was Paul Salak. And he said, oh, that's my brother.
Wow.
Yeah. And he said, yeah, we're both from Chicago. And I said, well, it's really interesting to meet Paul in Cambodia. He's a foreign correspondent. And you at a retreat, isolated retreat on the top of Rose Mountain. Then about a month later, Paul passed away in Cambodia. And they asked me if I knew his family. And I said, funny, I do know his family. So I called Rose Mountain and I put John in touch with my friends in Cambodia. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I really think the whole world is connected. Another thing that I think is really connecting is, I would say every day there's a stock that triples or quadruples on the New York Stock Exchange. Mm-hmm. Every day. Once a year, the stock market goes up and down by 50 or 100%. And so I guess I'm just saying that every day there are opportunities that people just glide by. It's like a big river, like the Mississippi River flowing by. You can only take your tin cup and just get like a little cup of water, and that's about all you can handle. And millions of opportunities pass by every day. But, I'm just happy with my one cup.
I feel like we could go into so many different facets of our own worldly observations of opportunities and seeing those deeper connections we have to the people around us, even if it's by chance encounters.
Yes.
In the last 5 years or so, it feels like a door has opened where I'm a lot more tuned in to the
Yes.
things that are happening around me, whether it's in nature or in interactions with people. And it's very hard, but trying to surrender and not trying to control so much, because that's when things get blocked.
Yes.
Opportunities get blocked,
Yeah.
or relationships get blocked. And I'm trying very, very hard to let that river flow.
Yes.
In all facets of life. And then to see those little indicators of like those signs, or in Hawaiian culture, ho'ailona, to tap into what nature is telling us that is probably happening all the time, but we're just not seeing it. My last question is, do you have any books or movies or readings that you would suggest to people if they wanted to tap into their own awareness of the present moment or their own feelings?
One book that comes to mind is a book that I wrote. It's called Jesse and Mary, and I think it's still on Amazon.
I saw it.
You saw it?
Yeah,
Okay.
It's still there.
Okay. And the reason I'm recommending that is I wrote that when I was 2 or 3 years sober in AA, when I was very conscious and aware of what I've discussed today, which is being in harmony, letting go, accepting, and appreciating life rather than trying to control life. So that's all reflected in that book, and that would be my personal experience. There are all kinds of things. In fact, there's so many things that I think people don't really digest them. Here's one thing that I really believe. So the world is perfect. There's nothing you need to do. That's Thomas Merton, who wrote over 60 books on contemplation and meditation. Toward the end of his life, he said, those books that I wrote, they're really good, but in the end, the world is perfect. There's nothing you need to do. So he was a hermit and a Carthusian monk, so he didn't speak, he just wrote. I guess in a way he's like me in that he lives in nature and he's quiet and he lets nature speak to him. If people could put the cell phone and the computer away for a weekend and not have television, and just, it's probably be good to go to a retreat place like St. Stephen's or St. Augustine's. Both of them are on this island. And just, check into these places for a couple of days and just wander around the grounds with no electronic amplification of your stress. I think it'd be really worthwhile.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate these little nuggets of wisdom and doors that folks can explore. Is there anything else you'd like to share on these topics before we wrap up?
I'm just really happy to be here to encourage people to be genuine and have an authentic experience living their life, because nobody's going to do it except you, and you're not going to do it watching television or staying at home. If you get out in nature or take a little bit of time to explore your potential and give yourself credit, that would be wonderful.
Allow that river to flow.
Yeah.
Well, mahalo nui, Kevin, for your time and your wisdom, and thank you everyone for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next episode.